issues within that period. Even after the strike became effective on 5th of December, we intended to have a return to work formula so that we can continue with the discussions, which return to formula, back to work formula, resulted in the initial offer to the doctors on 7th of December 2017. That offer included monetary terms which would have allowed us to continue. That offer was further improved in the course of the week from 36,000 and 42,000 to another additional 50,000 at the Ministry of Labor, with an effort to resolve this crisis. Further, this committee, through your chair, I'm sure is seized with the meeting of Mombasa, where the offer was further advanced, and on 4th of January, and that offer later was rejected by the doctors. We have had in government every intention to pursue dialogue and to restore services to our public sector. That was never to be. And therefore, when the court ruled that the strike was illegal, then we went into another dimension, which has resulted in the situation where we are. Now, Your Honorable Chair, I want to say that in the interim period, we also had a strike for nurses, which we resolved. We have had the clinical officers agitating, and we are having a committee which is meeting to be able to resolve that issue. I want to say, with regard to services, of course, we know that the services within the public institutions, especially hospitals, services have been impeded to a certain level. I want to assure this committee that with the resumption of duty of the nurses, our over 6,000 facilities across the country, that is dispensaries, health centers, and to some extent the level 4 and level 3 hospitals are functioning because we have clinical officers. Dispensaries are manned by nurses, health centers are not manned by nurses and clinical officers, and there are clinical officers in district and some county referral hospitals who do most of the outpatient. And therefore, the services which are suffering most, we know, is those people who need the services of a doctor, especially as far as operations are concerned and major illnesses are concerned, and where we have critical care which requires the review of doctors. Therefore, the Honorable Chair and members of this committee, those services are functional. But I want also to tell the committee that we are not satisfied with the manner in which the hospitals are today, because inpatient services are extremely affected because they require specialists and other doctors to function. And therefore, I want to tell this committee that the outpatient services may be functional, but the inpatient services are not functional in some of the institutions. I want to single out Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, where the management are done fairly well. Most of the doctors are working, and the management there has managed to discuss with the staff to continue with the services. That is one institution I want to say it's fairly functioning as compared to Kenyatta National Hospital. I want also to say that some counties have done fairly well, where half of the doctors are working and others are not functioning. Marsabit, Makueni, and other counties. Of course, exceptional is Bomet, where doctors have been working for reasons which we know that the county has engaged the doctors in a different mode. Reports which are filtering through is that some of the doctors have been resuming work, but very few, because there are threats by other colleagues of being attacked if they go and work. As we sit here, Your Honorable Chair and the members of this committee, all the CECs are in Nairobi. We are having today and tomorrow a crisis meeting to be able to review the status as of today. This meeting we called with the understanding that we were optimistic that doctors will call off the strike in the last 1 week, but with the turn of events has made us to meet, and therefore out of that meeting we are mapping out clearly what we need to do to improve the services and to bring in other players to support the counties in provision of health services. So, Honorable Chair and members, by the end of tomorrow, we will have come up with a structure and a framework and a statement on how we are going to improve services within the counties. Honorable Chair, in my previous statement, we did appeal to especially mothers and children, and we did instruct the counties that mothers can deliver in faith-based institutions because we have funds for them to do so. So as far as deliveries, difficult deliveries which need hospitalization, especially cesarean section, the counties are under firm instruction to refer them to the faith-based institutions. And then we pay through the free maternity services scheme which we have as a ministry. We also did instruct the counties to second the staff who are idle in their institutions to the faith-based institutions so that they can be able to provide care to the people. We did also instruct the county, since drugs are very key to the care of our people and they had the resources, drugs which are not moving within the hospitals where services have been interrupted, to be able to support the faith-based institutions within the counties. Because these faith-based institutions are registered with the National Hospital Insurance Fund, then we can be, through certification of the counties, refund them the cost to ease the burden which they are finding themselves in. This afternoon, from here, I'll meet all the bishops of the church, and that is the Protestant bishops, 10 of them, to be able to discuss how far they have gone with this support, and also to be able to hear them and see how further we can support them to be able to continue to provide care to the people. We are meeting this afternoon through the efforts of Bishop Langat so that we can be able to see what we can do. Honorable Chair, the issue at hand, we have been committed, and is in public domain, that we have tried our level best in terms of to agree. As late as Sunday night, the mediation committee, which was appointed by the court, had agreed on all the issues which were in the CBA, and they signed it at midnight. The contentious issues, the union, the mediators, and our people signed a document at midnight saying that they agree with the issues now which were outstanding in the process of the CBA. We, through the same committee as government, we were given to understand that over and above the offer which was given in Mombasa, the doctors needed additional. There's an allowance which we introduced of 10,000, which was given by His Excellency the President, called medical risk. Indications which came back to us from the mediation team is that if we enhance that in 10,000, they will be able to call off the strike. After consideration and meeting, that offer was given to the mediation team, which they passed to the doctors. To our disbelief, still, there was no return to work formula which was signed. Therefore, Honorable Chair, I want to say that as a ministry, as a government, and on behalf of the county government, with the discussions with them, because so far, I want to state that any agreement we have made with the doctors, the counties have supported it. And up to now, they support an action we have taken, and that is why we consult them. This morning, I spoke to Governor Murutu, and we are arranging to have a meeting this afternoon with the chair of the Health Committee of the Council of Governors and the chair of the Labour Committee, and if not today, tomorrow, so that the issues which arise and recommendations which come out of the Intergovernmental Forum, which is meeting today and tomorrow, they can be endorsed by the governors for implementation. Therefore, Honorable Chair and members of this committee, it's unfortunate Kenyans are suffering, and that we should not overemphasize. There is no any explanation which can be given to suggest that the services are running optimally. They are not, especially major hospitals, level 5 and level 4. With the clinical officers, they can do limited work, and they are trying their best, even in Kenyatta National Hospital. But we need to resolve this issue so that our doctors can go back to work. In agreement with the contents of the CBA, with a return to work formula, which takes the remuneration of the doctors by 40–50% with the additional allowance which is given. We believe, as a government, we have moved several steps to ensure we resolve this impasse. We have not held back. But, Honorable Chair and members of this committee, we must do things within the law, and you are better placed as far as the law is concerned. We have SRC, which has come up with a job evaluation, whose job evaluation will be implemented from 1st July 2017. That is the body which is supposed to advise us on remuneration of public servants. That will be in July. The additional funding which we have provided as a government, as a return to work formula, will be over and above the SRC. SRC implementation will come, which will take 4 years to complete. And therefore, we believe the position which we have taken in terms of addressing the CBA and the grievances of the doctors, having agreed on the general body, there are actions which would have led the union to soften their ground and be able to call off the strike, at least for Kenyans to consume services, and to allow us to proceed to conclude the CBA. And even if we were to conclude the CBA when the strike is on, Honorable Chair and members of this committee, with the position where we have gotten to, it wouldn't take 2 days to be able to conclude. That is why my prayer is, let these young men come out of prison, or that, and then we shall see whether they'll come to the table, and within a day or two, with that understanding, without shifting goals or changing the position, we cannot get a solution for Kenyans to have the services they much need from the doctors. I'll stop there, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
In your statement, you have greatly mentioned the CBA, which is actually the focal point of contention of the demands of the doctors. Do you have a copy of the agreements that you say you went into last night, the night before yesterday at midnight, with all the signatories of the KMPDU being inserted onto the documents?
Honorable Chair, I must say I was not a member of the mediation team, but my team gave me a copy of the document which was signed on 12th February, that is Sunday, at night. And this is the document with the signature of the mediator, the person from the ministry, the legal counsel of the Council of Governors, and the Secretary General of the KMPDU.
May you therefore highlight in your own words, I hope you have another copy, on what you agreed on.
I think that is the only copy I have. Yes.
Make the highlight on what you agreed on.
What I can say, Honorable Chair, this document, in a meeting in Mayfair, personally and with the members of the union, we had gone up to page 10. where we had agreed on most of the issues. And the issues which were identified initially as contentious by the SRC, one was to be able to have a document which accommodates the county government, because eventually the CBA will have to be signed with the county government, public service boards of the respective counties, because they are employers, they are entities in themselves. That is one aspect. And therefore, an agreed document which speaks to the aspirations of the counties was one issue which has been agreed. Number two, one issue which will remain contentious was the recognition agreement for the union, doctors' union, by the county government. As you recall, this document was signed with the Minister of Health then, without involvement of the county government. And therefore, the agreement which exists between the union and the ministry does not translate to recognition with the counties. Days before, into the mediation, a document was agreed upon between the union and the county governments and public service boards that framework of a recognition agreement was agreeable to both parties and could be signed. Therefore, that is a document which has been agreed and can be signed as a prelude to negotiating a collective bargaining agreement. So that is one area where the counties have agreed with the union. And therefore, signing that document will not be a difficult issue. And then the agreed document, this one which is signed in my view, is a document which has been discussed by the mediation team and the union and all the parties, and therefore the agreed position, that is one, in terms of training, in terms of numbers, in terms of every aspect of what I might call employee rights and interaction with the union, they have been agreed. The only contentious issue which was going to be discussed is effective date. And those in the labor movement, if they were to advise correctly, a CBA is not retrogressive, it's progressive. And the position of the people before that, that is the ministry and the Council of Governors, is a CBA which becomes effective from 1st July 2017. That is one area which was not the only area. Effective date is the area which was not agreed upon in those discussions. And I believe that is the conclusion which needs to be done. And therefore, in absence of, with all this being agreed, the only other part which we need to agree is the Appendix A, which is indeed the salary and remuneration. And in our view, with the SRC having pronounced itself, and this CBA becoming effective from 1st July 2017, which the union is of a contrary opinion, then we take the template of SRC and attach to this to become the salaries and remuneration for doctors from July 1st, 2017 for 4 years, because now CBS are going into a 4-year cycle. Those are the areas which are agreed upon, and I can give you this document. Somebody can make a copy so that I can remain with a copy and give to members. That is the document which was signed. Honorable Chair, I think I want to point out one issue which has been tormenting the discussions we have been having. One of the areas which I note out of the return to work formula, which they wanted to be included in the CBA, is inclusion of Kenyatta National Hospital, Kemri, Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, and all medical schools into the CBA. Any institution which employs doctors must be reflected in that CBA. It is my position that CBAs are between an employer and an employee. We cannot draw Kenyatta National Hospital, Moi Kemri, bodies with boards. board of directors. And therefore their terms and conditions of service are even different from the people in the public sector, in the civil service, if I put it that way. They even earn better. And therefore CBAs for those institutions are negotiated with the respective boards. To bring those institutions into the CBA between the counties and the national government, we consider that issue as extraneous. Medical schools and the university, and that is Ministry of Education. We cannot purport to sign a recognition agreement on behalf of medical schools and the universities. So if we tease the issues properly, that will not be a point of departure. We will allow the union to negotiate with Kenyatta, Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, to negotiate with KEMRI, and if there is any membership within the university, that is under the university leadership and the Ministry of Education. If they could agree to that, that will not be a point of departure. Honorable Chair, I want to say that residency is a position of training in a university, and the union has endeavored to bring the issues of residency within the CBA. Our position is residency is a training position within the university, and therefore if there are terms and conditions, even the admission must be discussed with the university, not with the Ministry of Health, because that is the purview of universities and also the Ministry of Education. That is one of the areas where we find there are difficulties. It is important for this committee also, through the chair, to know that the doctors have endeavored to request or to ask for the ministry, and indeed the government, and the institution, Moi Teaching Referral and Kenyatta National Hospital, to remunerate privately sponsored students. Now, our view, privately sponsored students, while they could be members of the union, they are not employees of the ministry, the county government. And therefore, for us to engage in a CBA which brings sponsored students into the CBA, that is not within our purview. That is, in my view, if there is consideration for those students within the institutions where they practice, that is a matter between the university and the respective boards of the institutions which are training. Those are the issues, Honorable Chair and members, which seem to have been taking us back and forward. Having agreed on the employer-employee areas as per that document, and having come back out with a return-to-work formula, which we think is fair, and having SRC pronounce itself on that, because that at a meeting, evening meeting up to midnight with the SRC, and SRC also met them with the mediators. I think, Honorable Chair, if there is goodwill and we focus on having those doctors on the table, then, as I said, it's a matter of a day or two and people reach an agreement. I stop there.
May I introduce a new friend, Senator Kalwale. He's a friend of this committee. You're welcome. Now, maybe before I open the questions from the members to you, the initial CBA document had areas of contention, and especially so raised by the ministry. One, that document was not registered in court. And two, the authenticity of the signatory. Now, to my knowledge, or to what is in the press, the minister and his peers have not been participating in the mediation committee that came up with that document that you are tabling now. So the question is, won't you again reject it later that it was not signed by the minister and the peers? Number three, if there was a document of agreement that was signed on 12th, between the ministry and the doctors. Why was that document not produced in court yesterday for the presiding judge not to jail the doctors?
Sir.
Yes, Senator Malala.
Mr. Chairman, I'm alive to the fact that you are many times an acting speaker, and I noticed that the accounting officer is not here. The accounting officer of this ministry is the principal secretary. So I would like that clarification. And if there's a reason why the accounting officer cannot be there, you see that reason is sufficient for you to accommodate him, lest it amounts to the same thing, Mr. Chairman, which you have referred to, that we are hearing from the grapevine or the media, that there is unwillingness on the part of the CS, who is my senior colleague in medicine, and the PS, the principal secretary, to be cooperative. It could as well be that if we don't allow them to explain, we might be extending that ujanja even to the Senate.
Well, you can also incorporate that into the answer you give. Now, let me see a copy of invitation that we sent to the ministry, whether that absence of the PS is by exclusion from what we wrote from here, or actually we invited him. Let me see that letter again.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, I want to say that I want to first of all clarify that as a ministry and my office, we have been cooperating fully with the mediation team. When it was appointed on Friday, they called me on Saturday, and on Sunday afternoon at 2:30, we held a meeting with the entire team in my office, where we got the brief on the approach they are going to have. And in that meeting, two things were agreed upon: that we have to appoint mediation team, and secondly, we have to have a meeting with the Council of Governors, which meeting I was to facilitate them to have with the Council of Governors. Indeed, on Monday, the Council of Governors were meeting, and I took them to the Council of Governors, where a meeting was held. They briefed the Council of Governors after I had briefed the Council of Governors in their chambers, and they agreed to cooperate fully with the mediation team. And the Council of Governors was to appoint a mediation team. I want to say that subsequently on Monday, that Monday I appointed a mediation team, which mediation team comprised the principal secretary, the secretary of administration, director of human resource management, and director of curative services in that committee. And therefore my participation was through that committee, and every morning I received a brief and they consulted me accordingly. And therefore, as to the matter of the document which was signed, we as a ministry, because our members signed, we ascribe to it, and there is no reason why we should reject it. And having gone through that document, is indeed exactly a document which I had prepared on 24th of January, which I gave them in my boardroom. They have borrowed heavily from that, which begs the question, why did they reject the document on 24th? Now, since that document is what they signed, I want to assure you there is no negating on the document which was signed.
Maybe before you continue, Madam Secretary, I want this to be totally clear. The first CBA was rejected, or being rejected by the ministry, because Mr. Bor, who had 2 days been gazetted out of the position, not even transferred yet out of the ministry, signed that document. Now you are telling us the statement that was signed on 12th should be accepted to be authentic, and yet it was not signed by you or the peers. Who signed it, and what was the level of seniority of that person, and how authentic is it to be accepted as an official document when it is not signed by the minister and the peers?
Honorable Chair, let me clarify. This document was signed by members of the mediating team. The members who are representing the ministry have my mandate, because at the end of the discussions, for the comfort of the chair, and I want to read her mind, she had to have the document signed, because as I said earlier, many of the issues we have discussed, they have found people negating, even when they have agreed. And therefore, in my view, it was a wise move by the chair of the mediation committee to have this document signed by all the members who participated up to midnight, so that come tomorrow, there is nobody who says we were not consulted the way we have seen it go. I want to assure you from where I stand, Dr. Odongo, who signed that document, had my full mandate, as is a member of the negotiating committee which I appointed. And therefore, that was a document to the comfort of the mediation team to get it right, and then tomorrow they go on with the other aspects which they were negotiating. With regard to the 2013 CBA, the ministry, the position of government, because in the media, even yesterday, some quarters alluded a government which does not honor its word, even when it is not written. That is far from the truth, because that CBA, the reason why we are where we are is because when it was signed, it is customary for any CBA, once it is agreed in the public sector, to be subjected to SRC. SRC has to agree. Secondly, therefore, when in 2014, when it was signed, and in 2014 they met, they had many retreats, SRC with the team, and guided them what needed to be done to that document. Before that process could be completed, in June 2015, the union went to court to force registration. Therefore, the document is not in question because it was signed by Mark Ball. The document is defective because, one, SRC has not given it the go-ahead. Secondly, county governments, whose devolution had taken place in February of that year. Therefore, the document should have included the county governments, indeed. And that is in the wisdom of the court, where the judge said county governments must be brought on board in this document. Without the county government, because the health is devolved, and without the input of SRC, therefore, the judge did not see the need to enforce a document which will not be implementable. And therefore, in her own wisdom, she prescribed the process we were to go through for that document to have the input of each and everybody and to be agreeable with the counties. That is the reason why we find ourselves where we are. However, you are correct in saying an officer had ceased to be an officer of government on 25th June, because on 25th June, new principal secretaries were gazetted, and this document was signed on 27th of June. Therefore, to that extent, there is an issue with the signatory of that document. But the circumstances, those who are there will be able to elaborate. Therefore, while that gap is there is fundamental flaw in the CBA, because the key stakeholders, who are the counties, the SRC, never spoke to that document. And part of that document, Honorable Chair and members of this committee, the delay, inordinate delay in addressing those issues, is partly because of the court case which stayed in court from June 2015 to October 2016. Nobody could address that document until the court pronounced itself. Sorry.
Okay.
He has responded to the procedural issue. Honorable Chair, the letter which I got of invitation, it was addressed to myself, and I stand to be guided.
Very well, I have seen also a copy that came from my office. The invitation was directly to the CS, but when you invite the CS, you indeed invite the government and indeed the office. We invite the CS, you are here with the officers whose names are not attended in that letter. Then is that unprocedural? We expected that really you should have appeared here with your peers. But all notwithstanding, Senator Kalwale asked a very important procedural question, of which I'm going to add an addendum, to put an addendum, which is that had you appointed the PS also to be part of the negotiation committee? 2, is it true that the PS refused or did not participate in any of those meetings, and why? 3, did you give a letter of accreditation to your officer who signed this document that his signature will be recognized as that of the minister or the PS?
Thank you, Chair. I had appointed a team. The team I had appointed, and I wrote this letter to the 2 co-chairs of the team on 6th of February. That is to the Secretary General Kotu and the chairperson of the Kenya National Human Rights Commission on Human Rights. I appointed, as I said earlier, 4 officers. The principal secretary, who was to be the team leader, the secretary of administration, the head of curative director, the head of curative and rehabilitative services, and the director of human resource management and development in the ministry. Those 4 officers, I appointed them on 6th of February 2017, and I sent those letters, and that is why I say they have my mandate to be able to discuss and consult as appropriate. As you know, in discussions, people break to consult and advance discussions while they are still on the table. Since this matter has been raised and is continuing to draw attention, in my view, I want also to say, on the 8th of February, I received a memo from the Principal Secretary, whose subject is nominees to represent the Minister of Health, addressed to me. And that memo says, in reference is made to your letter, reference that of dated 6 February 2017, copy attached. Due to other national engagement, I wish to nominate Mr. Francis Mushimi, Secretary of Administration, to be the team leader in the doctor strikes deliberation. I ask this committee not to pursue any questions for me, because that is very clear. And I want that committee to understand, since then, he never attended any negotiations. I thank you.
Senator Kitoni.
Thank you, Chair. With all due respect, I think there is a lot of murmurs in the country at the moment. It's unfortunate that the situation of doctors is far, and it's a sad thing for this country, knowing very well that it's an election year. The murmurs are that there is a big difference and fighting in your office between you and the permanent secretary. And there is this saying that when 2 bulls fight, the grass suffers. Kenyans have suffered. Is it true that this allegation and these murmurs has taken us to where we are now? I think let's be transparent to save the situation, because it is really unnecessary taken so long? When I look at what you told us, the point of contention, surely it should not have taken that long. So there must be a reason why this thing has stuck for so long, this part. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with due respect to the Cabinet Secretary, who is my old friend, very close friend. You are new in government. Government doesn't work the way you think. If Doctor, you look at the original CBA, that was signed on 27th of June, a copy of which you have given us. It was signed between the doctors and the government, and on behalf of the government, the signatory was the permanent secretary. If you look at the one of Sunday, a copy you have provided us with, the senior officers in your ministry, knowing that the person who signed on behalf of the government is the permanent secretary, they prepared the draft, and the person who was meant to sign was the the principal secretary, Braburi. But for reasons which you are going to tell us now, Dr. Odongo then ends up signing. Dr. Odongo cannot sign on behalf of government in this ministry for the reason that he's not the accounting officer. Could you therefore confirm that you are refusing to speak to the real problem, i.e., the doctors are in jail now because you are unable to bring your principal secretary, Dr. Muruguri, into the meeting so that the doctors can put their views and you counter their views?
Thank you, Chair. I want to respond that the document which I've given you, and only the chair of that committee can be able to clarify the intention of the signatures. I want to say, in my view, and the way I've been briefed, there is a document which was going to be cleaned after they moved to the salaries, so that eventually it can be put into a CBA format, having agreed on those issues. They were signing on the issues they have agreed as a negotiating team. And that is not to say that is the final CBA, because as you can see, Appendix A, salaries and other things are not there. Therefore, in the wisdom of the chair and interpreting her mind, she had to have the agreed position signed by the parties which were on the table. And when people go for mediation, they can sign that. That is not to purport that the particular member of that committee, Dr. Odongo, was signing on behalf of the principal secretary, because he was there with mandate to negotiate and to sign what he believes is a position which the ministry would take with the due consultation in between. Therefore, that document is for the mediating team. But I think the chair can be able to inform this committee. But I also want to say, having gone through that document, I associate myself with what my officer signed, being a member of that negotiating team. I want to address this issue of the assumption that the doctors or the strike is prolonged by that. As we continue, and the doctors have been before the Senate Committee of Health, my personal opinion, that is drawing an issue which is not the cause of the situation where we are in. And I say so with conviction, because I've been at that table since the strike came. I never delegated the negotiations of doctors. Any meeting which has been held, I've led it, whether with the Council of Governors or with the doctors, both official and unofficial meetings at night. Anywhere they wanted me, I have taken that responsibility to discuss with them. I know their mind,
and I know their position. If there are other issues which are happening outside the table, I cannot comment on that. But I want to say any formal engagement, other than now when we got arbitrators who are at a way of doing their things, there is no single meeting which I have not attended to discuss with those doctors.
May I introduce Senator Cleopa? She's with us. You can conclude.
So I want to say, trying to draw that conclusion is, in my view, we need to appreciate the dispute which we have been having at hand and the reasons which has brought us to where we are. Indeed, it's important to understand why the mediation committee could not conclude this discussion. And there's a question which was asked by the chair. Why was this document not produced in court? Because that one, the chair of the Kenya National Human Rights Commission can answer, and the Secretary General of COTU, because they were in charge of this process and they had maybe a responsibility to report back to court. That one, Honorable Chair and members, I cannot understand what happened in court. I was a spectator at that point. I want to say, and I want to persuade this committee, as we look for a solution to this problem.
Maybe before the persuasion, there's one question you won't escape. You wrote a memo to the peers,
yes,
appointing members from your ministry to be in the mediation committee as CS Ministry of Health. Then your peers writes another memo appointing another group, whether they are similar names or not, excluding himself from your order. To the same, Mr. CS. Are you in command of the Ministry of Health? Is the PS responding to your commands as the CS? I go back to the question Senator Kitoni asked. Do you have problems between you and the PS?
I think, Chair, to confine myself to the question you have asked.
You must answer that, Mr.
I will answer that question
Yes.
to you. In the management and in administration, we call that insubordination. That doesn't mean fighting. When an individual chooses to be insubordinate, I wouldn't baptize that and saying they are wrangles. And I want us to focus. Having read that statement, I want the committee to have taken it the way it is. And the interpretation to me is insubordination. And we leave it at that.
Very good. Yes, Senator Kadwale.
Mr. Chairman, it is not as simple as Dr. Mailu wants to take it. Justice Wasilwa directed that the negotiations be done. And when it was not completed, she added extra time. When there was nothing available, she jailed our doctors. Now, the doctors came for the meeting. But Muraguri was not there to allow the negotiations to progress. So, they have punished the doctors instead of punishing your principal secretary. I am privy to an application by the lawyers representing the doctor asking for a stay, and in that application you are enjoined together with the Council of Governors. When they were asking for a stay, the stay this sentence to allow us to conclude the negotiations. Can you now tell the Republic of Kenya what you're going to do to ensure that that stay is given to go and give evidence in court that actually the doctors are not to blame? It was you who was to blame because you couldn't present your principal secretary to discuss the terms and conditions of the CPA with the doctors. so that our doctors can get out of jail. They are relying on us because when they tried to do action, the police almost killed them last night, you saw. They are relying on us because when they went to court using lawyers, they have been jailed. So the representatives of the people, we are the only ones who can now persuade you to help them come out of prison.
Thank you, Senator Kamone. I want first of all to dissociate myself with the pronouncements of the court, in the sense that when the court submissions are put before the court, it is up to that court to pronounce itself, and the judge pronounced herself on the contempt of court case. Secondly, I want to say that the question you have asked is a question which has weighed heavily on me. And this morning, I want to tell this Honorable House, I had consultations with the Attorney General, and before you came, I said I spoke to the chair of the mediation team of doctors this morning, and I can assure you, and I did say that in my press conference yesterday, that I'll do whatever is possible to have two things. One, bring doctors back to the table, and we agree, within the law, and two, to ensure that services do resume for Kenyans, despite it being late. That consultation which I've made with the Attorney General, I've dispatched the legal officer in the ministry to the Attorney General's chambers, and the question which you are asking, I'm very alive to it, and I'll do whatever it is within my powers to bring those doctors back to the table, because the discussion I had with the chair of the mediation team is very clear in my mind. For us to progress, that is the way to go, and it will be our prayer. I want to assure you, Honorable Senator.
Just to a little bit push Senator Kalwala's question, are you ready as a ministry tomorrow to appear in court and plead for the doctors, using your lawyers or whatever method, that they should be released out of jail?
Honorable Chair.
It's today, yes.
Honorable Chair, as I said, I spoke to the Attorney General, and we agreed I dispatched the legal officer for discussions and guidance. And therefore, from here, I'm sure I'll get a position. And I have told this committee, I will do whatever is within my powers to ensure I bring our colleagues to the table. And I know I cannot bring them to the table from prison. So, allow me to get the brief and the direction we take as a ministry as far as this issue is concerned, because, Honorable Chair and members, it is not the intention of the ministry, and personally myself, and indeed the government, to aggravate this matter. There are circumstances which has led us to this, and the best thing which I choose to do is to focus on the issue, to get a solution, and wade through any other extraneous circumstances which might usurp my energy to be able to get the doctors on the table. I have told you, I've spoken to the chair of mediation committee. If I didn't have the will, I wouldn't make that gesture. I'm seeking for that solution. I'm aware as we speak, doctors are meeting in the KMA office, and I'm following up, because we must get a solution to this problem. But of course, I know it is too late. It has happened for too long. But at the end, we shall all sit back and look at those issues, and let us help me to focus on the problem which is at hand.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order, so that we do not allow the CS to engage us in big or speak, could you, Mr. Chairman, consider adjourning this sitting so that you give the CS and his team time to go and find out how far they have gone, and probably at 3 o'clock or at a particular time, they come and report back to the Senate what they are doing to ensure that the doctors are out of prison. Because until doctors are out of prison, the strike is stuck. You will not negotiate with them from prison.
And indeed, as I am taking my time to think of that request, let me bring to your notice that the so-called collective bargaining agreement between the Ministry and the Republic of Kenya that was signed on 12th of February of this year is not legal at all as far as this committee is concerned, because there is no signature appended on it of the CS Ministry of Health, not even a signature of the principal accounting officer of that ministry. And therefore, as I consider to answer Senator Kalwale's statement, a question, one question that you must answer is, are you ready as the CS, because you have said you agree on everything that was discussed, are you ready to go to the original document and append your signature as CS for it to be acceptable in this committee? As for the point of order, maybe there is one pressing issue or any pressing question before I make a ruling. Yes, Professor.
Thank you, Chair. I want to agree with that. I also agree with the sentiments of Professor and Chair. That there are serious issues that are contained here and lapses in terms of administration. What I think here is purported to be a bargaining agreement, I think is the ministry of the meeting that took place. Minutes. This is a document that just shows the minutes. It doesn't take the format of a PCA. At the back of this, it was intended to be signed by the three names that are there, and it's not signed. So it cannot even beg minutes. They are unsigned minutes. So there are space. Unfortunately, there are issues here that I think need to be addressed in your office. And I thought really issues that are arising now in the ministry should not have arisen, because this is the first time that we have a minister who is a CS, who is a medical doctor. We also have a PS at the same time who is a medical doctor. And I really think things should never have reached this position. And I think those issues that are pertaining here, which you as a CS should have taken care of. Somebody has insubordinated your office and you have just ignored. And you are assuming that even your legal officer you are sending to the Attorney General will not insubordinate your office. And nothing really will go on. There is a tradition now to insubordinate your office by everybody. And this is where we are reaching this issue. And I think the issue really, the ball is in your court now as a CS. And ensure that perhaps do everything possible to regain the confidence of the doctors by making sure, legal or in whatever other means, that these doctors will eat their githeri at home tonight and not any other day.
Yes, Senator.
And I want to agree, Chairman, with my senator here that we adjourn this thing here. We sit on this issue. We are prepared, the senators, to come here, sit again at 4 o'clock and hear what is happening and get to know whether there is anything tangible that is going on.
Senator Mshanga?
Kodliva.
Senator Kodliva?
CS Dr. Mailu, I want to register my disappointment as a leader in this country, and I want to say that you have failed this country, and as you said, you want to use the possible means to make sure the doctors are out and you bring them on the negotiating table. I think this thing you should have done long time ago. I don't see the reason why you waited to go up to this to the extreme. And I want to agree with Dr. Boni Khalwale that we adjourn, and we want you to use those possible means to ensure that doctors are out. Dr. Mailu, I want to believe that you being there, you did not use your office and you are not making proper use of your office and the authorities that you have been given by this government, and you have failed us. And for that reason, I want to say that if this negotiation does not end and Kenyans continue to suffer, there's no need of you being in the office. You would rather step aside and allow the country to move in a proper way. We are not happy, and I'm not happy.
Yes,
I think I wanted to, first of all, to respond to what Senator Alessandra has said. This document, and I want to be very clear, was not written by the ministry. And it is important for people to direct questions, because this document was written by the mediating team under the chairmanship of the chairperson of the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights. It's not a ministry document. And therefore, if it is their minutes and their document, I said that I'm persuaded to believe the chair wanted to document the discussions they had. It is not correct to apportion this document to the ministry. Indeed, the major stakeholders in these discussions are the county governments. And therefore, this is not my document. It's not a Ministry of Health document. This is a document of the mediating committee drafted by under the chairmanship of the chairperson of the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights. And therefore, the members of that mediating committee signed this document. If there is any defect and any lack of procedure, I think it's for them to answer. Therefore, it should not be attributed to my office or in extension to the ministry. The fact that the PS was not there is one issue. But signing of this document, that is a document of the mediating committee, and that is why the chair even asked, why was it not produced? And we agreed that that was the honors of the mediating committee to produce this document when they feel it's appropriate. I want to say that I hear the senator and sentiments about the protracted nature of the strike. I agree with her that I share the same sentiments that I feel we haven't been able to deliver to end this strike. I do not derive pleasure in that kind of thing, both as a human being, as an officer, and as a doctor. It's a painful situation. That as it may be, I hear you, but as the chair next is ruling about this afternoon, I had intimated to the chair and this committee that the bishops of the faith-based organization were coming for a meeting at 2 o'clock to address the matter and to see, since they are the ones who are supporting the nation, to address that matter. I want also to say, yes, I have sent a team to consult, but I also want to know, to let the committee know, which I believe you know, the matter before which affected our colleagues is a matter of contempt of court. And therefore, the court is very central in how it views our intercession. And I did say, if that can lead to bringing the doctors to the table, we'll do everything within my power, within the advice of the Attorney General, on what to do. I cannot say I'm going to categorically succeed, but I'm going to seek that advice, because I did also say, that's why I spoke to the chair of the negotiating committee of the doctors. What can we do? And the message he gave me, I have communicated to this committee that they want their colleagues out. If I can be that open and put that information before you, I want the committee also to know that we are putting initiative. The failure of the past will not stop us from progressing to resolve this issue. Because if we suggest we have failed and we do not conclude, then that will not be helping Kenyans. Therefore, continue to use every remaining energy to see that we resolve this crisis.
Yes. Yes, Senator.
Yeah, Dr. Mailu, with your ministry, I think you'd rather meet would end the doctor strike than bringing now the faith-based to be helping the community. We'd rather now hit the nail on its head. Number one. Number two, when we sat with the doctors last week, they alluded that they weren't so much on the CBA, but they had other grievances, like hardship allowances and the insecurity they're facing as they go to work, blah, blah, blah. There were so many other considerations. Kindly assure us that you're going to put everything in one basket so that you don't solve the CBA and then the doctors come again now with the other grievances. Thank you.
Yes, Professor.
Chair, I was a bit very low, you know, I'm a doctor as well, and I'm feeling really very low. Yes, with all due respect, when you mention the words them and us and all those other things, I think I felt very disappointed. All those committees that have been appointed and what have you, whatever they come out is for the consumption of your office. It is for you to use that information and produce a Ministry of Health and Government of Kenya CBA, not one by a committee. The committee was meant to produce information for you. And I'm now wishing that my chair here would assure you as the CS that the Senate will have come forward here to help you to resolve this problem. It is not them and you, and these are Kenyans. This is our problem, and we will have to tackle. And you are in the highest pinnacle of the Ministry of Health. Except for the President on top, you are in charge. And really, it should not be anybody else. In fact, not only do you have the powers to advise, you have the disciplinary powers in your ministry to ensure that what is meant to be effected is actually effected. Your office was called upon to instruct your lawyers to appear in court to make a stay. And now you think it is the responsibility of the legal officer to deal with it. It's your office. The doctors will not be in jail if you did something. And even now, if you did something, the legal process in this country will be followed, but will be followed faster, so that by evening these doctors will be out. And this problem of doctors will be 50% almost resolved, because those doctors will be out. As long as they are inside here, you're not getting anywhere. And in fact, the problem will boomerang and its boomerangs, and the culprit will be the CS and the CS in the ministry.
With due respect, Chairman, I don't know whether you rule in favor of the adjournment, but if you do, then I want to refer you to Article 125 of the Constitution that will stop Muraguri from thinking that he is above the law. So that at that meeting, we use the force of Article 125, the CS to be accompanied by Muraguri be summoned directly. The second point, before you rule, Mr. Chairman, again with utmost respect, my colleague, my senior, you remember how I congratulated you when you landed this job and how we enjoyed lunch together. But in view of the fact that you are the driver of policy in matters of health, and all those matters are in your full custody, and here you are painting a picture of a helpless person being insubordinated by your junior. I compare you with the CS Matiang'i, that assertiveness, which you are obviously not having. With due respect, I beg you as your colleague doctor, if you cannot solve this problem, lead by example, resign as a cabinet secretary, you let this rot go to somebody else. You are actually embarrassing us as doctors of medicine in this republic. The best thing is for you to resign. People are dying even as we speak now. The poor, the rich go to Nairobi Hospital where you have worked for many years.
Now, as per the point of order raised by Senator Kalwale, I want to refer you to the Constitution of Kenya, Article 125, 2. For the purposes of Clause 1, a House of Parliament and any of its committees has the same powers as the High Court. You are now before the High Court of Kenya. This is my ruling and order. Taking into consideration your request to the Attorney General and other requests amongst other issues in trying to resolve this process today, I rule that you appear before this committee tomorrow at 10, accompanied with your peers, to give us the progress report on what you did today. Not only that, to confirm doctors are out of jail. So ordered. The committee is adjourned till tomorrow, 10 a.m.